From eating disorders to self-love. What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, champion of authentic joy, catalyst of transformation. Haha, almost forgot. Also forgot that I don't do that part at this time, do I? Today is a Monday, so I'm actually recording my part early. How fun is that? Some things have happened since my last podcast. We're going up to Dudes for Lightworker Toastmasters, and enough people signed up, and we have 5 distinguished points, so we are a distinguished club. So if you've been following me along with my Toastmaster journey, you know that having a charter club that is less than a year old, have 5 distinguished club points, and chugging along is impressive. The exciting part is I did look at the other charter clubs and since then, and we're the only one with more than 2 distinguished club points. I would go into what those are exactly, but just say you need 10 to be president distinguished, and right now we have 5, which makes us distinguished. We need 7 to be select distinguished, or 9 to be presidents. How you get them? You can go to toastmasters.org or search Google. This is not a Toastmaster podcast, but hooray, I'm excited because that's, the Joyous Expansion way. Intention, action, celebration, and pop, celebrating y'all of getting a distinguished club and having over 20 members after our first dues period. So we are chugging along. We're still growing strong. It's still a lot of work, still building the culture, and it's amazing. I find it interesting that I have now done 2 interviews in a row, first being last week with Keto Carol and this week with Camille Elizabeth, who you'll be hearing from, and both of them having to do with weight. It's almost like the universe is talking to me. Because really, I had 2 people set up beforehand. Well, Camille was one of them. And both of them got sick. And then I started a Carol. And of all the diets that I've done, the keto diet, it is the one I have done the best. By far, it has allowed me to not get hungry. Talking to somebody on Friday who went through something harrowing with eating disorders, bulimia and anorexia, which what I understand they go hand in hand. But in some cases, you can argue that I have an eating disorder because I am over 400 pounds, which is not something I like to say out loud. It's generally something I like to keep secret. Tell people I weigh 378. Like, that's so much better. But then again, that is how high my last scale went. That just got me thinking, talking about my weight journey and body, probably dysmorphia, I don't know, of looking at my body and not being a huge fan. It all started when I was young. From what I understand, when you go through an abandonment thing, your body gets a rise in cortisol, and cortisol in kids help. One thing cortisol does is make it so your body starts storing fat for later. Because this is not a health podcast, but that's one reason why they say to lose weight, you got to work on your stress, because cortisol is one of the ways that your body decides to store fat rather than break things down. My weight, I was always a skinny child until pretty much my parents broke up. A whole deal. Don't need to really go into the past there. We went from Georgia to Washington, leaving my mom behind, and something that would probably get my dad arrested if my grandparents and mom really wanted to push it. But I'm really happy they didn't, because that would have been even worse. But that is when I started to get my gut. And once I learned more about it, I believe it's 100% stress-induced. And then that started my relationship with dieting, yo-yo dieting. Mostly because I was a wrestler as well. That didn't help. Trying to get under weights and stuff. But the frustrating part, especially once I went to high school, once I went puberty, I always had, I just hate saying it, man boobs and a gut. And that was no matter what I did, I had a man boobs and a gut. I was even when I was 190 pounds, freaking muscle. I was so strong. I could squat like 400 to 500 pounds. I could bench 345. And honestly, that was mostly mental, because I could do 315 10 times. But for some reason, seeing all those things on all the weights, all those 45s, just kind of freaked me out a little bit, and I couldn't really push it. But I was strong. I was just muscular and just huge, but I could never get ripped. And I did a lot of standard American dieting, which is low fat, high carbs. And I even had olive oil butter, which is disgusting, by the way. Stuff didn't even melt in the microwave. And from what I learned is that did not help my metabolism and grow. And my sister, Tasha, went through the same thing. I mean, she ate like 600 calories a day and was still gaining fat. And no one believed her. I mean, I did. I saw how little she ate. And she wasn't the type to lie about that. Because, I mean, Tasha could be many things to people, but one thing Tasha is not is a liar. And I 100% believe her. And I never known her to be, well, at least about that. I've heard stories from that. Anyway, this is not a Tasha podcast, even though she would probably love all Tasha all the time podcast. But then after high school, that's when my weight started ballooning, mostly because all you can eat food. I gained the freshman 60, getting up to around 240, 250 pounds. And the fun part about that is after a while, your body kind of morphs back and you get used to it. But during the summer, I would work out a lot or run about 3 miles every day and not eat enough, which did cause me to lose a bunch of weight, but probably did not help my metabolism because once I got around food again during this, because you get all you can eat at the dorms, and I gained most of that back, probably getting up to around 270. And then it just yo-yo dieting for a while until I finally get over 300, and then 285 to 300, 285 to 300, then 300 and 315, 315, then 315 to 330, 315 to 330, and then my book release. I like to say that I've been on ups and downs, but honestly, I don't know if I ever gotten over releasing my book in 2013. Because for some reason, I learned that I eat to not feel emotions. I eat just to not feel, and it doesn't really matter the emotion. If I feel extreme happiness, I want to eat. If I feel extreme sadness, I want to eat. If I feel mad, I want to eat. If I feel elated, I want to eat. It's almost like I have a numbing quality. I just want to numb. I just want to get back to neutral. I just want to get back to an equilibrium. And when I released my book, that was huge. And the huge part about that was vulnerability. As I mentioned in my podcast in the past, that I did not work on myself and really go into that. And even in one part of my book, I wrote an intention on making my weight loss goal in, I believe, 2014 or 2015. Probably 2015. And it's 4 years later, and I have not made it. In fact, instead of 234, which is my weight loss, is what I think I should weigh, which some people think is heavy, but I think that's just the way my body handles, because I'm still kind of strong. I'm strong. Or at least I want to get there before I understand where I want to go. And there's a lot of it is a not love of the body, looking at it and not feeling love for the fat rolls or the man boobs or just the feelings of pain. And I mean, it's uncomfortable. But the funny part is that this 400 pounds that I weigh now is much better than when I was going from, at the time, a 350 to 390, which is where I ended up at the end. And I've been 375, 400 for 4 or 5 years. And this time, now that I'm 40, I really want to stop it. I want to fall in love with my body and really take things to the next level, because I know that if I want to be a professional speaker, if I want to go out to reach crowds, if I want to inspire people, I need the energy to do so. And even if people look at me and see a fat schlub, that doesn't really matter, because honestly, people will think anything. But what matters to me is actually having the energy to do so. And right now, I don't think I could have a high energy speech that I want to give for 60 minutes. And that's really what I want to focus on is getting that energy up. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that. I do the natural thing where at January 1st, I do great up until a certain point. And that's generally during the summer, where I plateau, and then in the winter gain the weight back, and a lot of times during around November start losing it again, and then start over again, and that cycle. Then gaining it back in December because, Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then January starting over again. And this time I've plateaued in this first 4 months, which is odd for me. So that's why I got that therapist. That's why I got acupuncture. I want to figure this out. I don't want to do this anymore. I want my 40th year be the year I figure it out. And a few things I know I need to do. I need to meditate more, preferably twice a day. Because I do my best when I meditate at least 20 minutes a day. That helps. That helps so much. So meditation, important. And I think, yeah, we're starting there, and public declarations. I do better when I declare things in public and go for it. And just need to keep on going and notice when I stop. And I generally stop for any time there's an extreme emotional event. One was my roommate moving out. Another one was actually reaching a weight loss goal a little faster than I thought I was going to, and feeling happy, but all of a sudden that made me want to eat. Sometimes just losing a job. So my goal 2 years ago was to make my inner reality not affected by my outer reality, because if there's no enemy on the inside, no enemy on the outside could do me harm. And that is harder than I thought it's going to be, because it's 2 years later and I still haven't reached that yet. Though I am better. But speaking of better, I need to introduce the interviewee, Camille Elizabeth. I discovered Camille by another person I know named Sarah Connor. She is a energy coach, is the best way I can explain Sarah Connor. And I subscribed to one of her programs. It was on Facebook. It was super fun and exciting and invigorating. And one of the people that she would come on was Camille. And there was just something about Camille that intrigued me. She just had this energy about her that seemed special. Like, if this person would to take their vulnerability and take that light that is within them and put it without, that this person can do great things. Camille Elizabeth is an artist and facilitator, working with language, imagery, and embodiment to share messages of beauty, love, and collective collaboration with the world. She invites life to fully express its vastness and depth through herself and others. Her intention is to exist as a fiercely loving leader in this time of great change. Camille has prioritized walking her path of healing core wounds and family dynamics, understanding that uniting one's fragmented energy body towards goodness is paramount to generating any type of true peace, aka success, in the physical world. The biggest way she needed to address this in her life was bringing loving attention to the relationship she had with her body and curiosity towards the pain it was expressing, realizing it to be a manifestation of much bigger forces beyond herself. Camille's choice to face and overcome a lifelong battle with disordered eating was the first and scariest door to walk through on her personal path, integration, and activation of her true self. She is here today to share her story. And now, here's my interview with Camille Elizabeth. Hello, Camille. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Brett. It's a pleasure to be here.
I actually discovered you through... Oh man, I hate when I blank on names. Sarah Connor. We were in the same Facebook group when she had her little 6-week course.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know we were in the same group. That's so cool.
Yeah, I remember your videos, and you'd go on with her and you'd just be so vulnerable and just your light would be shining so bright. And then I decided to follow you on Instagram because you seem like a very inspiring person.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What a cool backstory to find out here.
So how did you go about becoming this bright and shiny person?
I love that question. It definitely wasn't always so. I've kind of told people different moments in my life that I kind of felt like internal Benjamin Button. Have you seen that movie? That Brad Pitt movie where he starts out like 100 and he becomes younger over his life?
I haven't actually seen it, but I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, I think I saw it when it first came out, and I really resonated with it internally because I kind of feel like I was born like this very grumpy old person. I didn't feel like a child as a child. I was angry. There were a lot of emotions and energies that I felt in myself that I didn't really know how to consciously be in relationship with. I didn't know how to how to just like be comfortable as a human being. And so there was a lot of anger and resentment that I directed toward myself in my own childhood and adolescence. And so I was just angry and depressed, and I was just a really different person than the person that I am now.
Where do you think this anger came from?
I think there's so many layers to it. I mean, I think, of course, we all have our personal narratives of the things that have happened in our lives, the things that we wish hadn't happened. And then there's things that are passed down through our families. And then there's just collective pain bodies that I think exist, like the things that we're all trying to just heal from, that almost like if there's a cancer in a body, if our whole solar system is a body, there's a cancer, there's like a pain, a problem, a human issue. It's coming up in all these different cancer cells or all these different individual people, but it's not the manifestation of any singular one.
What issues did you have early on?
Well, I guess the thing that really is like my main issue in life, or like the main place where I have had the opportunity to grow, has been around my relationship with my body and around food. Because most of my life I was actually having different types of disordered eating. It was mainly bulimia, but there were also times of restricting. For people who don't know about these terms, bulimia is an eating disorder in which people either just like eat normally or overeat and then force themselves to get rid of the food, either by throwing up or over exercising or some kind of purging. And then anorexia is something that's a bit different, which is more about restricting food or intake at all to begin with. People who are diagnosed with either still can have some crossover, their symptoms and how this shows up. And then there's also a much wider category that's just called EDNOS, which are eating disorders that aren't specifically classified into either category, but are still situations where people are having kind of an abnormal, obsessive relationship with food that's not serving them. That's a manifestation of some other kind of pain, and that's really harming their life and their well-being.
What was your relationship with food in your body?
It was so many different things at different times. But if I could kind of sum it all up into the common theme, no matter how it was showing up, was that it was something that I really used to measure my worth, to measure if I was lovable, if I was beautiful. And it was the thing that my system used to fixate on and to project all those things out onto.
So skinny equals beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not even just skinny, but like so many different specific areas of how to be perfect. And the eating disorder, it's almost like the way I can describe it to someone who might not have any idea what experience is, it's almost like I'm sharing a body with someone who hates me and is trying to kill me and has convinced me that it's me. And sometimes I'll have these lucid moments where I realize I'm not, but when I'm really in that experience, it's like I'm sharing body with someone who's almost hijacked me or possessed me to be completely against myself. And it's really this bizarre experience. And what it wants is ever changing. So you can never actually fulfill what it's telling you to be. If you ever become it, then what you're being told, shifts slightly, so it's always like that dangling carrot just a few inches away.
So now that you're skinny enough, your butt's not big enough or something along those lines.
Exactly. You've got it. Yeah. Yeah. It's this morphing holy grail that you can never achieve, or that I could never achieve. And I think it was actually having the experience, or part of what helped me was moving through all these different bodies that I had, being all these different weights and having all these different relationships with food and diets and exercise and things, and seeing that by doing any of the things, nothing ever got resolved. I never felt better, or I never got to wherever there was. So that was really what had me also kind of push beyond and say, okay, well, what kind of life do I actually want to live? Listening to this voice really isn't getting me anywhere.
So how bad I've heard there's a lot of side effects to that. How bad did it actually get to?
It got really bad. It got a lot worse than really many people in my life know. Like a few people in my life that saw me in the depths of it, but it was something that I was trying to run from so hard that, well, it brings up a funny story. I made a big life decision around this. And I actually, in the moment, was not conscious that a huge part of this big life decision was me thinking that I was somehow able to run away from my bulimia. 4 years ago, I decided to move to Indonesia because when I had gone on a trip to Indonesia, the whole time that I was there, I felt completely free of those thoughts and impulses around my eating disorder. And so even though I didn't put this together among all the other reasons why I wanted to go there and move there, when I see in retrospect, a huge reason why was that I thought that I could go there and avoid or somehow get away from that aspect of myself, only to find that once I did move there, I quit school and quit my job and just bought a one-way ticket. It was, this is going to be my new life. I was more confronted with that aspect of myself than ever, which ultimately I think was what was meant to happen, because it was really the catalyst to me then deciding to come back to the United States, really invest in getting support from people. I think that was the biggest piece too, was reaching outside of myself and not putting it on me to do it all on my own, because that was something that kept me trapped for a long time.
Yeah, I can see that. Number one, I always like to say, no matter where you move, you always bring yourself with you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So it was getting support, reaching out. How was that first reaching? Who did you first reach out to?
Well, there were people in my life who knew about it, but it was always something that I had this very shady energy around, you know? I didn't want to talk about it. On rare occasions, I would feel open, but usually I wouldn't bring up if there were times when I was really caught up in it or times when I was doing really good. I would just kind of keep it to myself and bring it up on rare occasion. So what really changed was, I guess, when I really talked to my biggest supporter in the whole world, which is my mom. And she had been trying to lovingly push me into getting some outside support for a long time. And it was finally just my first step of starting to see a therapist once a week who I would talk to. And that already felt really difficult for me to start opening up to one person. And it ultimately didn't end up being like the best suited person to help me, but it was the biggest thing, I think, to just take the first step and start breaking out of like the reality that says that you have to be completely alone in the experience. Because I think like that's one of the biggest power moves that any of our deepest shadows have against us, is somehow getting us isolated with just it, instead of letting us have maybe our relationship with it and still be an honest relationship with other people and be witnessed in the process. So you realize that it actually isn't maybe the worst thing in the whole world.
I 100% agree. And no, I went through extreme social anxiety growing up, and I had this feeling of not only was I going through this, I was alone. I was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of reaching out to someone seemed foreign, because how could anyone understand what I am going through?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can really relate to that. Another piece around reaching out and connecting that was huge for me was, this took me even longer than going to see a therapist. Sharing with one person already felt big. And I had heard about a like free support group that was going on in San Francisco. It's actually put on by a group called the Lotus Collaborative that's in San Francisco and in Santa Cruz. They're awesome. And they have once a week meetings for people who are either struggling with or recovering from eating disorders, and also their friends and families. Supporters can also go there and talk about what it's like to be a supporter and maybe share notes about what is really working or what's really not working. So I think that's really cool. And going there and actually getting to see other men and women, young people, old people, just all kinds of human beings who were going through what I was going through was just life changing, because I was totally in a bubble thinking that I was this total idiot who would be so dumb to get ensnared in this totally ridiculous, self-created shenanigans, sticky mess. And then I see all these beautiful, intelligent people who are doing all kinds of cool things in the world, along with having this shared difficult experience with me. And just, it really shifted my perspective.
Yeah, I even saw an article today that The Rock at one point was depressed.
Yeah, I know. It's so cool that now people in media are finding ways to speak out more about the more difficult parts of their human experience.
When you first started, how was it? How did it feel like to be vulnerable with somebody?
Oh, wow. It's funny because in some ways it's similar to how it feels now, even though I feel like I have a lot of experience being vulnerable with people. It's just like my tolerance for almost the side effects of being vulnerable are higher now, you know?
Mhm.
Actually, I remember when I thought that I was vulnerable, but I wasn't. Or maybe I just was to the degree that I could be at that time. But at the time I'm talking about, I would share about things, but only in the past or future tense, not ever really the present of what's really, really happening here and now. And I realized that there were some things that felt so much more vulnerable about sharing what's present in my heart, or in my thoughts in this moment, than sharing about another experience that was scary yesterday or last week. But oh, I'm not in that state now, but to be seen in the state. The first time that I went to that group, I actually cried the entire time. When we went around to share, I could barely even talk because my whole face was waterworks. I just felt, it was like all of the shame in me was just melting out of my eyes. And I just felt so embarrassed to be there, but also like so proud of myself to be there. It was just so many emotions at the same time that I just kind of had to let it wash over me. And everyone there was just really kind and supportive, and both there for me and giving me space and honoring that it was really vulnerable. That it was from there, it got a lot easier.
That's awesome. The idea of getting support to help you. But I've also heard to supporting others also helps. So were you able to find supporting others in this group, supporting your growth as well?
Oh, so much. I think my comfort zone is definitely supporting others more so than getting support. It was really edgy for me to be there and share what was going on for me, whereas it felt so natural to, after just the first few times that I was there, I started organizing a meditation group outside of the weekly support group where we could get together and just check in with each other and do meditations. And yeah, I just really took initiative to stay in contact with some of the other women in the group specifically that I had connected with, and getting to hear what was going on for them. And even at some points having some stay at my house that were going through different things. And it was really nourishing for me to have the opportunity to support other women who were going through, or other people who were going through the same experience, by seeing myself be compassionate toward them. Again, another example of how I could continue to be compassionate toward myself and what I was going through.
That's awesome. Can you explain your meditation group? What kind of meditation was it?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I had put a ton of thought, not thought, but a whole lot of, I guess, premeditated intention into. It was something that just kind of came about naturally because I wanted to spend more time just being intentional with these other people who were looking to recover in the same way that I was. There was a short period of time where we would get together once a week and just bring like a speaker, and someone, either myself or someone else, would bring a meditation that they had recently found or enjoyed listening to. And if it was a nice enough day, we would sit outside in the sunshine, like somewhere in the grass, and we would just get together and do the meditation, have a little conversation afterward. And it was just a really kind of simple space to meet in, to just clear our heads and check in with each other. Someone who can, on a very easy level, just understand where we're coming from.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really nice.
So how long did it how long did it take to start to feel comfortable in your own skin, or do you feel comfortable in your own skin now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. I'm actually, I mean, I imagine I can always feel more comfortable in my own skin. There's probably so many things. There are so many ways I can still explore myself and my body and like the different things to do in it. But I feel more embodied now than ever before in my life. And when I say embodied, okay, I don't know if this will make sense to everyone, but maybe it'll make sense to some. For me, a lot of my life, I almost didn't feel like I was in my body. My awareness wasn't there. It felt like my consciousness didn't really feel fully safe to experience what was in my body. So there was always just this kind of vacancy, disembodiment, kind of like a head floating around, but and this body was just kind of here, and I could kind of like feel it vaguely, but I wasn't very engaged with it. I couldn't really tell what was going on in it. I didn't really care. I was apathetic to hateful with my range of emotion toward it. Now I feel so present in my body and so grateful to have a human experience that involves getting to be in one, and the different things that we can do in it and maybe feel like we can't do in it. And yeah, it's all really fascinating and beautiful in a way that I never thought that I would get to feel in this life. There was honestly a lot of my life where I thought that I would die at some point from eating disorder related complications because I just saw it as something I would never overcome. And I was, well, that's that's what's going to happen. I respect every life. If it's something I can't overcome, it's something I can't overcome. And I lived still worth something. What a different reality to where I get to be now, where there's just a lot of play and possibility that I couldn't see earlier on the road.
That actually does make sense to me. When I would have my biggest social anxiety moments, especially when it came to some girl saying that she liked me because my social anxiety was really with women, it almost felt like someone else jumped into my body and I was watching him just make a total jerk of himself and just say something completely stupid so I can
Mhm.
think in the next 5 years, I can't believe I just said that stupid thing and I'm going to be alone all my life, blah, 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 blah. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate so much to that feeling of something else jumping in or you not really being in your body when these things are going on. And yeah, and just what a relief. It's so funny because for a long time I was so afraid to be in my body. And I think when I first started to experience more connection with my body, there was first just a lot of pain to sit with. So I do get why there was some fear to be in here, because there was a lot to just sit with, bring loving attention to. In persisting through that, loving through that, then you actually just get to be here. Just I get to be here inside this body, and it's really a relief to make it through. Not that there isn't still pain, of course, but that I feel like there's some kind of almost like initiation process to go in there and burn up almost all that isn't love that's still stored in there, so you can actually make some space to exist. And I think a lot of us kind of through this life end up holding on to, intentionally or unintentionally, a lot of stuff that takes up space in these bodies that we need to eventually kind of look at if we want to have some room to stretch out.
one thing I learned in my coaching practice is the use of powerful language, where it is using I statements instead of you statements. Because when a lot of people are telling a story about themselves, a lot of times they say, you know this, when you do this, but
Mm-hmm.
really it's I. And I have noticed a couple times during our conversation that you have corrected yourself from going from a you to an I.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that you learned and helped you?
Yeah, I guess I can't actually think of a specific time when I learned that, but I think in general the lesson has seeped into me, especially in telling stories. Yes, there may be a lot of overlap or similarity with other people and experiences, and everyone's experiences are unique in their own, and to do our best not to speak for other people. And I'm also trying to find that balance because I'm taking some communication classes and performance classes right now. And in a lot of these classes, I'm noticing that it can be really challenging to actually say things with you in the way that I think so many of us are socially conditioned now. And I think a lot of that is good, but also where is it appropriate to say things with you has been kind of like an inquiry for me. It's interesting. I also like using we a lot. I use we often in my writing because I like to see all of us, whoever might be reading that, in some kind of unified way.
What do you write? Tell us about it, your writing.
I write mostly, I guess, would be poems, and I'm starting to write some songs. But yeah, I write what comes. This is the simplest answer. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
It's funny, kind of forever. When I was a kid, as I kind of mentioned before, I was in a dark place in myself, and I believed that I was kind of everything that I wasn't. I remember when I was a kid, my mom always telling me that I was a writer, and I'd be like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a writer." I was Miss Contrary. Everything that was said, I was like, "No." And I totally was a little writer. I would write poems, and I submitted a poem to Highlights magazine. I don't know if you know that little kids magazine, but I
Yeah, I
submitted
remember.
and I got to be in that magazine. And that was really fun for me as a kid, but I couldn't even celebrate it. I can celebrate it now in retrospect, but as a kid, I was still grumpy. I was still like, oh yeah, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just a kid's magazine. Now I look back and I'm like, Camille, little Camille, that's so cool. You were like 8.
That is freaking awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I wrote like a lot of sad poetry when I was growing up. And that was something I kind of even judged in my own art. I wanted to be able to write things that felt more inspiring and beautiful. And I felt like I didn't have access to that. I wasn't feeling it. And so, how can you really write something if you're not feeling from that place? How can it feel real? For me, I haven't really found that a way. And so it's been really cool to watch my own writing progress over time from like where I'm at. Now I feel like I can write in ways that feel so much more beautiful to me than what I could write before, because before that wasn't, yeah, what I felt, what I saw.
Well, during your path, were you able to find a way to use that creativity to transmute your pain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's been one of my biggest outlets for energies that I didn't know what to do with. Even, I mean, not didn't, because it's not past tense, what I don't know what to do with. Yeah, there are a lot of moments that come up in life where I'm not sure what to do, and there are moments where choices that maybe aren't in the highest alignment come up as opportunities. When those opportunities come up to do something against myself, those are the moments where I try to fill with a blank page, like something where I can write or draw or just create or let something out of my body. Maybe it's exercise if I'm feeling really built up, but if I'm just feeling some kind of surge of energy or emotion, writing is an outlet that's really allowed me to move that in a way that is harmless and actually creative and oftentimes really fulfilling.
So, what would you say your relationship with your body is today?
Hmm. Something that's like always growing and new, that's very engaged, which is exciting. It's not something that's stagnant. It's like a relationship with any of my best friends. I know her, but it's even closer than that because we live together, connected as one. We communicate, we talk to each other, I do my best to take care, and it's good here. Good. Good to have fun, explore. Still, like, I'm finding my way around how to have preferences for my own appearance in a way that's totally for my own enjoyment and not coming from any place of judgment. There's ways that I actually just have my own preferences around how I would like my body to be because it's what has me feeling the best, and how to allow myself to have some kind of maybe what is the right word? Some kind of awareness of how I'm eating and how I'm exercising so that I can really live in the body that's optimal for me without getting that confused with any kind of control or suppression of the things that I want either. Finding that balance.
So, one thing I've learned in life is that sometimes those old things come up again. So, when you do get those moments of confusion, how do you steer yourself back in the right direction?
I talk to someone. That is the biggest change that I've made. Whenever I'm really starting to feel lost in the woods and I'm just going down to a place that's dark and that I recognize and that I don't want to go to. In the past, I would always just kind of slide into that and let myself disappear off people's radars. But now, once I start to notice any of that familiar territory, I visit a friend or I call a friend, I communicate what's going on. I bring my awareness to the discomfort instead of directing it away. And that is immediately more uncomfortable. But then the great side effect is that usually it can avoid a downward spiral and just end up feeling maybe bad for a couple hours instead of avoiding something for hours or days or longer than that.
Awesome. One of my favorite people, Satyan Raja, who is just one of those, guru type people, talked about that even the most enlightened persons have moments of enlightenment, but what makes them a master is they can steer themselves back in 8 seconds. So 8 hours or so is awesome.
Yeah, 8 seconds. I love that as a goal. That would be a beautiful place to be where the second I notice myself derailed, 8 seconds later, right back in the center.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Maybe one day. We'll keep dreaming it into reality.
So the thing that really surprised me about you after following you for I guess, half a year, is the fact that this isn't something you do for a living. This is just a way you present yourself on Instagram and watching you on those videos. So I thought it'd be a fun thought experiment to ask you if you were to create a business based off of this, what would it look like?
Gosh. I mean, like, wouldn't I like to know? That really is the question. I think what I can say about this right now is I've really enjoyed being able to explore how I want to share or exist in the world from a place that's totally separate from any particular brand that I need to be aligned with or particular agendas or things I need to sell. Not that those things aren't wonderful to engage with, but that there's been something really unrestricted about just being like, I'm just going to allow myself to express and see what unfolds from that place. And now that I feel like I kind of have a flow going of how I like to share and things I'm interested in engaging with, things I might want to offer in the world, curiosities I have around that. I am wondering, what is the next step? I see myself very much more as an entrepreneur in life than, I don't know, definitely not 9 to 5, but then I don't know, than a lot of other conventional lifestyles. Yeah, I'm in an inquiry right now of like, how do my creative interests, how do my interests around supporting other human beings to feel more full in themselves and their lives and their own expression, how does this translate into my life's work, my career of sorts? So it's been my question, my ongoing kind of inquiry.
Do you see yourself in the background helping people or in the foreground in front of crowds?
I think for a long time I tried to imagine myself in the background, and I have had a lot of experience in different places in the background, and I love that. But I've had resistance to the idea of being in the foreground, and I think that's starting to move, and I'm feeling more open to it and seeing that that might be more of what I'm being called to do. I don't know what that looks like, but being in a place right now, I'm studying communication and performance and feeling led there in some interesting ways. I don't know. I don't feel like that's for me to sit back in the background.
Well, one thing, your light does shine bright, and I do truly believe that the world would be served if you do get out in front of us. And
Thank you. Well, I'm exploring some different things right now. My best friend and I are we're actually starting a podcast of our own. So that's something that can be looked out for in the coming months as we kind of navigate this. We're going to be both filming it and audio recording it. Just having some really interesting conversations on there, inviting some guests and keeping it just kind of like, yeah, these casual but surprising journeys of conversation.
awesome. Do you have a name picked out yet?
We have a couple in the works, but we haven't decided yet.
Awesome. I hope you do a great job.
Thank you.
Actually, I know you'll do a great job.
Well, I may reach out to you for advice because it sounds like you definitely have some good systems down here, some experience.
I'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Well, we are towards the end of their interview, and one thing I like to ask my guests is to give a 1 minute of motivation. This could be something along the lines of you are transported back in time to your 8-year-old self, and you only have 1 minute to convey the wisdom that you want yourself to know, or to just condense your life purpose to a minute.
All right.
Are you ready?
I am ready. I can say that this is probably not geared toward an 8-year-old, probably more toward someone a little older, but this is definitely a message to a past self. Pain pushes until vision pulls. Someone recently shared this quote with me, and I'm sharing it with you now as an invitation to see your struggle from a more compassionate perspective. If you're living in pain like I was and want to move through it and access and fulfill your vision, here's my advice. You have the ability to accept who you are and what your life looks like in any and every moment, no matter how far it is from what you want to see. When you send judgment and resistance toward an aspect of yourself or outer world, the natural response is for it to constrict, locking into place like the jaw of a pit bull. But when you choose to bring your loving awareness to an aspect of yourself or outer world, the natural response is for it to melt like ice, becoming gracefully malleable like water, able to change shape and navigate around any obstacle.
Nice. I love it.
Thank you. That is what I have to share.
Well, Camille, I would like to thank you so much for being on my podcast. Hearing your story of going through your struggles with your body is something that I can relate to in many ways, and I'm sure many of my listeners can relate to. And I absolutely love your message of reaching out. There's just something that I know for myself that can hold back from reaching out. And we are a collective being. We are a tribal people. And when we reach out to get help, that's when our lives can change. We can lean on each other, and to listen to someone who leaned on others to pull themselves out of the muck and mire of life, I think is very inspiring. And through your light and your shining example, I am sure your podcast and whatever career you base off your amazing experience will be very successful and awesome. And I look forward to seeing it.
Oh, thank you so much, Brett. It's really been such a pleasure to talk with you and to dive into this really intimate topic. I've never really dove into it in such a in-depth way with someone before. So it was really just cool opportunity. And I appreciate us taking the time to take this ride together. And I look forward to seeing more of your work as well. It's been really nice to connect on a deeper level here doing this podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be the first to share.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And that was my interview with Camille Elizabeth. Wasn't that exciting, folks? I did not realize I was the first to delve into those type of topics with her. I thought she was a pro, to be honest, when I reached out to her, because just what she shares on her Instagram and what she shared on the group, I just assumed that this person does this for a living and at the very least reaches out to people and does things. So awesome. Maybe I discovered a star. A star is born. Does that mean I'm Bradley Cooper? I don't know. Another thing I like about what she talked about was the importance of seeking help. I can talk about myself, and I can honestly say I am not good at seeking help. I'm actually kind of bad at it. It is not my strength. It has never been my strength. But really, there is just so much power in seeking help. And that is strength. To hold it all in and to try to go at it yourself isn't strength. I'm not going to say it's weak, but it's not the embodiment of strength. Heck, even the saying, pick yourself by your own bootstraps, is supposed to tell you how impossible it is to do things on your own. So even in the saying where people say you should go at it and do it yourself, the whole point of that saying is you can't. You need people. You need to rely on people. And that's the important thing. It is important that we can rely on each other. This individualism that has taken hold of this country, the United States of America, in my opinion, is kind of dangerous. Yes, we need to keep our individual selves and truly embrace what makes each and every one of us special. But we got to realize that when we take what makes each and every one of us special and connect as a community, we could take ourselves to a whole new heights. I heard in Portugal that they decriminalized drugs, illegal drugs, marijuana in itself. Instead of punishing people, they put people in support, and nobody wants to go back to the old drug wars because it's working so well. Or when people came back from Vietnam and they did a study on those soldiers, the ones that did well and were able to work through the PTSD and were able to integrate in society were the ones who had support structures. And that's the same for almost any aspect of life. Generally speaking, it's the one with support structures. In fact, in studies where they had rats get addicted to cocaine until they finally died, if those rats had a support structure, had other people, they didn't choose the cocaine water, they chose the regular water. A lot of times when we do that I'm not saying everyone, because each person is special in their own way and not all things a cure-all, but for a lot of times just having support, a community around you can help. And there's nothing wrong with seeking help. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable to people. And that vulnerability is magnetic. That is what attracted me to Camille. That is what made me want to speak to her, to put her on this podcast, because she is vulnerable. She put herself out there. And there's just something magnetic about being your authentic self and putting yourself out there, what she did. And I know that she's going to do great things because that vulnerability is there. Basically, be vulnerable. Embrace your vulnerability. Embrace the fact that you don't have to do it on your own. Somewhere out there is a support structure that can help you. We humans are tribal beings, which means we are better in groups. We're collective. We are closer to ants than we are to, I can't think of an individual animal. I guess beetles? Sometimes analogies don't work. It's a problem when you do this without planning. So if you also think Camille is all that and a bag of chips and want to check her out and wait for her to finally get out there and start changing the world like I know she is going to, Camille is stepping up and out into the world in many new ways this year. If you like to read her poetry, find out more about her upcoming podcast and events, or maybe even collaborate. Follow her on Instagram at Camille Revealed. CamilleRevealed. You can also follow her on Facebook by searching Camille Elizabeth. Sometimes she shares things on Facebook, like video, that she doesn't share on Instagram. Smiley face. And that is episode 19. I like to celebrate episode 19 because this is 2 more than I made in my last podcast. I had a podcast called Increase Your Joy, and I reached up to 17 podcasts. It was just me talking about my life and ideas that I had, and I only hit 17, so being 2 over, hooray, 19 episodes. That's awesome. I am excited for episode 20 because it's a round number. So I am Brett Dupree, your champion of authentic joy, joyous expansion, life coach, catalyst of transformation, mother of dragons, not the last one. If you like to listen to me more, just check out pod.joyousexpansion.com for all my other podcasts. I also believe I'm on iTunes and Podbean and wherever podcasts are shown. If you like this episode, leave a comment. That would be awesome. Leave a review. That's super helpful. That actually allows other people to find this podcast. If you'd like to send me an email, you can be the first. You can email me at bre2ts@dupr2es @joyousexpansion.com, where you can find more info about me, including my free gift at joyousexpansion.com. And once again, I'd like to thank you for being awesome listening to my podcast. I love you for who you are. And I, once again, will always remind you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play my jingle.
joyousexpansion.com joyousexpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach, good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue, I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. joyousexpansion.com joyousexpansion.com. Yeah.